Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Curtis, Chief Monkey of Wall Street Oasis, and this is Monkey to Millions, a show where you get a front row seat as I mentor young students and professionals to try and help them break into their dream jobs. In the first cohort, you'll meet 4 students, all preparing for intense job interviews while trying to also balance a personal life and schoolwork. The goal of this show is to shine a light on the struggles of trying to break into competitive positions with a non traditional background and to give you a roadmap for your own success. My hope is that as you get to know these 4 impressive students, you are inspired to dream big. Remember, these are real people and this is their true story. Let's get to it. In this session, Grace tells us what investment banking internship offer she accepted for the summer of 2021. We also discuss her plan to prep for accelerated recruiting for the summer of 2022, which is going to happen as early as March 2021. Kind of crazy. We expect that she will have at least interviews with Blackstone, Goldman, and Moelis. Really not too shabby. Enjoy. All right, Grace. It is the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. I don't know if you're doing any shopping or whatnot, but yeah, I'd love just to hear an update since last time we chatted.
Yeah, so
Has it been
I think
6 weeks?
I know it seemed weird that all that time had already passed.
Maybe it's only been 4 weeks. Maybe like our calendars are messed up. But anyways, it's good to get an update either way. So maybe it'll be a short one.
So last time we talked, I think it had been the week that I had done my interview at Citi and I had gotten the offer, which I ended up accepting. So it feels really good to have that all settled in place, not have to worry about this coming summer anymore.
Nice. So that's for sophomore summer. And that's going to be for how long is that program?
It's a 10-week program over the summer.
Okay. And is it for a specific group or anything like that?
Because I'm a sophomore, I'll be rotating through 3 different product or coverage groups.
And you had already told them, right, kind of what you're interested in. Are they going to be able to accommodate that or no?
I think so. And there's a Fordham alum there who's an MD. And I've been speaking with him a lot. And he really wants to help me out with kind of getting into those groups that I'm interested in.
That's awesome.
And he's already connected me with some other people. So I think when that time comes closer to putting us into those groups, I'll be able to hopefully at least get 1 or 2 groups that I'm really interested in.
Cool. And so you'll do that. And then that can sometimes lead into another internship offer, right? For that summer.
Mm-hmm. So
do you know if they put the pressure on? I mean, this is kind of way out. We're still 6 months before you even start that. But do you know if they put time pressure on you to accept?
I'm not sure how it works because I also know that Citi does a pretty large program for sophomores in the spring for interviewing for junior summer. And so I know that for a lot of people who interviewed in the same super day I did, who didn't get an offer, were guaranteed to get into that program this spring. It's one of those insight programs that's a few days long, but it pretty much gets guaranteed accelerated interviews. So I'm not sure if I also will be going through that.
And I'm trying to think. Meaning this spring you'd be interviewing for your junior summer?
Yes, because
it's so
crazy. There will also be other firms starting up interviewing this spring for summer.
That's actually kind of good for you in the sense.
It would be a relief to have something before going into this summer, knowing what I'm doing the summer after.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's crazy the timing, but the good news is you're up against other sophomores. You're not up against people who've done a real full-on internship yet. I mean, you already have done a banking internship, but the good news is, by the way, can you hear me okay? I'm doing kind of a different setup than usual, different mic. So the way I see it, you should kind of anticipate that is what's going to happen. They'll probably just put all the sophomores into the same accelerated recruiting. So any kind of chatter around other banks in terms of like where you might get in, like Goldman for an interview, stuff like that? Because didn't a lot of them say like, yeah, just apply for the sophomore stuff or for the junior summer?
Yeah, so there's a few things or possibilities, I guess. So I think last time we spoke, I also mentioned the Blackstone program,
Right.
And so I ended up getting into that. I found out it was only a 7% acceptance rate for their women's fall sophomore program, or there were a few freshmen in there, but it was mostly sophomores.
Wow.
And I did that. It was a 2-day program a few weeks ago. This year was all virtual, of course, but of all the different virtual programs I've done, this one was by far the most engaging, I will say.
So like, what do they do? That's so cool. So they gave you like 2 weeks. And what did it do? It just gave you like a background of like the different groups that are there. What did it do?
Yeah, so they really showed us all the parts of the firm. And of course, there's so many different groups there. They do so many different things. So there was a lot to hear about, but it was great that we got to hear from all levels vertically too, and from so many different people. And then they also had a few kind of outside speakers. They had a psychologist come in and do this 1-hour session. And there's a communications consulting firm that they use for their own employees that did a session with us. So it it split things up a little bit. It was very interesting overall.
And how big was the program? Like how many other was it just for sophomore women?
Yes. So they have the women's program, which is what I did. And there were, I think, about 70 participants.
Oh, wow.
And so, over 1,000 applied. So
that is nuts. That's nuts that you got in. That's amazing.
I think it's really
from school. It's from people like all over, right? From
of the participants, at least there were, of the 70, at least 7 of them, or at least 10 of them I know were from Harvard. And it's a lot, very concentrated in a few schools. So it was great to see that actually 3 Fordham students, 2 other girls that I go to school with at Fordham, got in.
Is that because you helped them?
I think we had all spoken to the same Fordham alum at Blackstone who would pass their names along to HR. So I think that helped a lot.
That's cool. That's cool. So Fordham was well represented then. Harvard did well. I'm sure it was a bunch from Wharton.
Yeah, Wharton, Yale, of course, and a few others. But because of that, because we did that program, and there was one that took place, a more general diversity one for other underrepresented minorities. But it was basically the same programming, just another, I think a week away. And so they really like to fill their classes as much as they can with people from those programs. So all of us will be able to go through accelerated recruiting in the spring or in the early spring. So the way they told us that it works is that
for your junior summer.
Yes, for summer 2022. So they'll be emailing us sometime in February, HR will, and we will fill out our ranking of our top 3 groups there. And then of those 3 groups, they'll pass along our resumes, and then those groups get to go through all the resumes that have been sent to them, and they pick out the ones that they want to do a first round with. So you're able to interview in that accelerated process, it sounds like, with up to 2 groups. And they like to fill as much of their class as they can. So there's no limit on how many people they can take in that early accelerated round. And that all happens for most groups, at least the ones that I'd be interested in late February to mid-March. So if I go through that and I go through up to a super day, then I could know whether or not I have an offer before the end of March for summer 2022.
Yeah, which is awesome. And so is that the only accelerated process that you're kind of guaranteed to be in right now?
So I'm also
Bank of America too, right?
I'm full for Goldman. I'm going through their diversity program again, but I think it's pushed a little later. I'm not sure how much, but it's another one of those insight programs. So that program itself, if I got in, would be sometime in January, February, or March. And then I'm not sure how the timing works for juniors, because I was more familiar with it last year. If I'd been
my head's spinning just from hearing like just the dates. It's really confusing. It's really hard to know, but it's good you're on top of it more than I am. I think it's good we're chatting actually, because it's kind of crunch time. I mean, it's November. It's December basically next week, right? And so you have only a few months to potentially prep for your junior summer interviews.
Right.
Which just goes to show you how insane the accelerated process has become. I don't like it because I don't think they can actually get a great sense of who's doing it. It kind of puts people at a disadvantage who discover later in college what they want to do, right? to no fault of their own, let's say they come from more disadvantaged backgrounds, they just have no clue what investment banking is till their sophomore year. So it's a little sad in that sense. You're luckily not in that boat. You came in knowing, and so you're in a good seat. What I will say though is you should have some sort of I don't know what's your schedule look like in the spring in terms of class load.
I think it should be a little better than this semester was.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is just because of the nature of the work that I'll be doing. This semester's been very project based and a lot of group work. So there's been so much time that's been wasted just on kind of communication things, especially with people not being together. So I think next semester is going to be a lot easier to manage. And also now they've extended our winter break and then just taken away our spring break so that people don't have the opportunity to leave campus. So I now have all of January off. And
that's awesome.
So I'm going to, I'll be finished with finals around the middle of December. So I really need to catch up on, I guess, like kind of the networking and the aspect of following up with people who I've already spoken with, especially the very beginning of this year. So I'm going to take that time to follow up on everything because
are you saying the networking stuff? I think it's always a good idea, but are you saying the networking stuff to try and get into more accelerated processes like in March, April, potentially?
So part of that is there are some people who I spoke to, say around this past January or February, who then told me, oh, when you're a sophomore, you should apply for these things.
Right.
And so depending on which firm it is, I wrote it down then and I looked at the timing of when that application would be. Mm-hmm. And then also just more generally to keep in touch, even if it's someone who...
Have they started opening some of these windows yet or not till next year?
Oh, do you mean for the different programs?
Yeah, for the different programs.
Some of them it looks like will be opening in December or January.
Okay, get in.
So for instance,
get in right away. It shows you're on top of it.
So I've been checking. I think this year too, a lot of the timelines have shifted a little bit. Like Blackstone this year had did their program in the fall, and they've never done that in the fall before. Usually, their only women's and diversity programs are after the new year.
Mm-hmm.
They consider them spring programs. So I'm trying to be on the lookout to see if anywhere else does something like that too.
Everyone's just trying to leapfrog the other. It's almost worse than private equity. Private equity recruiting is so accelerated now, but at least they all go at the same time.
Right.
Whereas now, the banks are just going earlier and earlier, and they're up to the point where they're going to be in freshman year soon, offering out junior year internships, which is pretty funny. Okay. So it sounds like you're on top of all that stuff. The networking, I agree. Just catch up on that to see if you're missing it. Because sometimes these programs, you don't hear about it. Or they're like, oh, there's this new program and we published it on this random part of our website that you can't find unless you talk to people. So definitely talk to people, ask them if there's any sort of any other initiatives you should be joining or programs for this spring. What about interview prep? How do you feel?
I feel pretty good.
Have you done any? I mean, you're in middle school, so have you had a chance to do any more practice or mocks?
Well, since I finished with recruiting for this summer, I haven't, I feel really solid on the basic technicals. And so now, especially after the Blackstone program, the groups my top group there that I'm interested in is the infrastructure group. Okay. So I know a lot of that prep, and this is from a lot of the people at Blackstone I've spoken with, is really demonstrating why you're interested in that particular group and showing that it's a genuine interest. So I have been kind of following the space overall, and there's the past few weeks I've been bookmarking a lot of longer articles that I want to read once my finals are done, and I can actually pay more attention to those things.
Have you thought about the game theory behind which groups in Blackstone to target? Because I'm not even sure off the top of my head which ones are considered are there functional groups like the M&A group? Versus
so it's an investing firm straight out. So yes, they don't have any kind of banking advisory side in that sense. The most competitive, of course,
they don't have equity. Yeah, okay. So the private equity is most competitive.
And real estate, but real estate has several different groups within it, and I'm not sure how competitive it is when you break it down through those different groups because of acquisitions, asset management, the REIT that they have, and there's a lot of different
acquisitions will be top there.
So
I can tell you.
I might be more interested in the asset management part of real estate. I'm still looking more into that, but I know that infrastructure is my top choice, and that's also their
infrastructure as part of like the actual acquisition. So it's in the private equity arm of.
Yeah, it's separate from real estate.
And Blackstone, it's so big, right? Don't they have but they have an advisory function too. They're a bank.
Not M&A advising.
Not M&A. Okay.
No, it's they have like a private wealth solutions group, but it's basically selling their products to wealth managers, and then they have a tactical opportunities group.
Is a Blackstone M&A yeah, you're right. They got out of it a while ago.
And then they have like the credit groups and the secondaries investing.
So really should think of it as like buy side.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Straight up.
So, yeah, I don't think of it as a bank. And so
it shows you, even running Wall Street Oasis shows you how behind I am and how things change. And I'm like, wait a second, isn't that? So it's different, but how's the training there if you were to go? Do they have it's so big?
Because it's so big, then this is something they stressed throughout the program I did, is how much you're really thrown in the beginning and how much exposure you get. Mm-hmm. And so you have the training, of course, that you go through, but then a lot of that training too is through your interaction with your team, because the teams there are so small for how much you're doing. So a lot of it is through, they talk about how to get hired. To begin with, you need to show that you're a really good communicator and good at kind of debating, and how a lot of the analysts that spoke with us talked about how, like, on their first week on the job, they were kind of going back and forth with MDs about, well, why do you think this? What's your opinion on this? So it's not as much, of course, it's very different from starting out at a bank in that sense of what you're learning. But and then this depends on the group that you're in as well within Blackstone. But
have you been able to see anybody at Blackstone as a private equity analyst, kind of, I assume that's the title they give you coming right out of school, but then getting promoted directly to associate, or do they kick you out after 2 to 3 years?
I'm not entirely sure. And because private equity is not a group I've really been looking at there, I don't know about that area as much. I'm a lot more familiar with the real estate and so infrastructure, I guess. The
infrastructure group, how big is their infrastructure fund? Probably like massive.
Yeah, I think it's
$20 billion or something.
Yeah, it's about 20 billion. And when they first launched it, I forget exactly what the structure was, but it was backed by the Saudi Public Investment Fund. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very fast growing group right now. And it's very new. I think it might be the newest group at Blackstone. So it's, I think that might make it a little less competitive also, just because it's more niche compared to something broad, like just real estate.
I'm just doing some searches right now. Core Plus and Core Infrastructure. They even got rid of their restructuring business. I'm way behind.
Yeah, so
PJT, they kind of spun it out. Yeah, they spun it out to PJT, so they're pure PE now, right? Yeah. Or pure direct investments, not all.
Yeah, it's entirely buy side.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. So are you, this is nuts. Yeah. 15 billion of committed capital on the infrastructure side already. Okay. That's cool. I think, you got to know, I guess the tough part is you have that potentially fast approaching. You have, Goldman as well.
And this is one of the ones, like someone I talked to a while ago at Moelis, it's not someone who's directly involved in recruiting, but I think he's a senior vice president or managing director, and he's from Baltimore, and that's the original connection I made with him. Mm-hmm. And so he said he is somewhat involved, or to some extent involved in recruiting. So he really encouraged me to apply for I think it's a women's sophomore program. Mm-hmm. So I looked, and last year the application for that opened in, I think it was late December or early January. So I have that written down. I keep checking on that. That's someone else I'll follow up with. So there's that.
Some
I'm
good
trying
leads.
to think. I don't think a lot of the other boutiques have sophomore programs or women's programs
The
or any
thing
kinds
is,
of.
even if you miss these, even if you don't get one of these three, let's say Moelis, Blackstone, or what's the third one?
Goldman.
Or Goldman. Yeah, even if you don't get Goldman, Moelis, or Blackstone, which are all amazing, it doesn't mean you're not going to get, after doing the city internship your sophomore summer, it doesn't mean you're not going to get a lot of looks again your junior year.
And I think most people get return offers too after your sophomore summer, as long as you don't screw anything up.
Yeah.
Usually,
as long as you're willing to work long hours and suffer a little bit, and then you're good. Okay. Well, it's pretty exciting though. I mean, these are really tough firms to get into. These are like top of the top. So it's great to hear that your Fordham people were represented well too. So I guess what's the plan? What's the game plan for you? I know you said, kind of get in touch with everybody again, but I think really like it comes down to interview prep for me, because it's like when you get into that interview, you want to be super comfortable, feeling like you've told your story 100 times. And then for each one, I think putting the story together of what group and what specific groups and why makes sense to do that in January while you're have that time, not just pure networking.
Right.
Because
and I think a few people I've spoken to at Blackstone in real estate will sometimes ask me on the phone, like, oh, well, like, why are you interested in real estate? And when I tell them why, they say like, oh, that's really good that I talk about the internship I had the summer after my senior year of high school.
One sec, my daughter, let me just, okay, Everly is joining us for the first time ever. So it's day after Thanksgiving, so it's very much a family week. Everly, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi.
Okay, so.
How old are you, Everly?
How old is she? Yes, how old are you?
5.
Oh, very nice.
So, so she was just telling us about. So sorry, go ahead. You were saying that they were happy that you actually had a why real estate answer.
Oh, yes. They said, oh, that's a lot more experience than I had coming in, or knowledge I had coming in about real estate.
Yeah,
so I feel good about that.
Yeah, especially as a sophomore, I think that's really good because that's pretty rare. So, okay, then tell me a little bit about just in terms of your actual game plan for the interview prep. Do you feel like you need a little bit? So there's obviously the why Blackstone, why this specific group, which should be like probably 50% of your time spent. But the technicals, like, don't definitely brush up on them, right?
Right. And that's the thing is as it gets closer, there's another student at Fordham who will be interning in the real estate group this summer at Blackstone. Mm-hmm. And he said that he really wants to help me with interview prep when that gets closer if I'm interviewing for any of the real estate groups.
Cool.
And then one person.
We have a real estate modeling course now. We can get you access.
Okay.
Yeah. It's in beta, but yeah, it might be helpful.
Yes, definitely.
Cool.
I'm trying to figure out how different the technicals would be for the infrastructure group as opposed to real estate. And I think I'm probably just going to have to talk to some people and ask.
Yeah.
Because it's a small group to begin with.
Yeah, I think infrastructure is such a broad term, right? It can mean real estate, but it can also mean a lot of just infrastructure plays.
Because there's digital infrastructure, and there's also things like pipelines and waterways.
Yeah, and bridges and all that good stuff. So yeah, I think it's kind of like pretty exciting that it's coming up so early. I didn't realize. Now it makes sense. I'm like, oh gosh, the spring you're interviewing for a year and 3 months out.
Right. It's kind of crazy that I could still be in my current internship and know what I'll be doing 2 internships later.
Yeah, but that's good. That's good. I think the good part is if you can lock it up now, why not? And then you can stop doing Monkey to Millions. You won't need me. It'll be like coasting. We'll do one call every like 3 or 4 months, just to hear how you're doing. Because it's funny because Andrew's done, John's done. You're the last of the initial cohort, but I mean, you were the youngest too. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense because they were in like junior year and senior year, respectively. So I'm actually just took on somebody new that I'm starting with next week, which is exciting.
That's exciting.
Yeah. He's a little bit older. His name's Victor. He's actually much older, but he just graduated undergrad. He was an immigrant that had basically didn't know English when he came over here. Like,
oh, wow.
So, That'll be fun. That'll be fun to see if I can get him in.
Yes.
Totally different, right? But yeah, I'm excited for you. I think you have a lot, like, kind of you're ready. It's just a question of that using that time in January to make sure you're ready to go with all the interview prep. Because like I think at this point you don't need to go crazy and get into like 20 more processes. You just need to nail the few that you have. And if it doesn't go well, it's not like you've run out of time. You can continue to kind of get those relationships. You can still get the return offer from Citi. That looks good. But then other people are going to want to like poach you. Either way. So, right, Everly? Yeah, she agrees. She agrees. Okay. Anything else? How can I help? Because it sounds like you're in a great setup. You're going to head out?
No, I want to stand on her lap.
You want to stand on my lap?
Yeah.
That's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Okay. So any other way I can help?
I can't think of anything right now. I feel like I have this whole list of things I'm going to do over break, but right now I'm in I guess kind of the last 3 or so weeks of school. So there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, just finish your finals, do well with your grades, and
Guys!
What are you doing?
Get me.
Oh, you want to go down?
No, get me up, Papa.
Well, she wants to stand up on my lap, so I think we're going to call it.
All right.
Email me if you need anything. Okay? Say bye.
No.
We're going. And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, patrick@wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.